our chief guest, Mr. Ashish Mathur, MD JISCO, our eminent speakers, members of the press, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and a very warm welcome to you all on this crisp, cool evening to the beautiful ambience at the Center for Excellence. This evening we bring to you a panel discussion showcasing the way forward for Indian cinema and will cater to the tomorrow section of the event. I now have the pleasure to invite our chief guest, Mr. Ashish Mathur, on stage, please. I'm also privileged to invite our speakers on stage. Mr. Imtiaz Ali, please come on stage. Mr. Imtiaz Ali really requires no introduction to us at Jamshedpur. He was born in the city and is a product of DBMS English School. Later he attended Delhi University where he took part in college theatre, started Ibtida, the Dramatic Society of Hindu College, made his directorial debut with the film Socha Na Tha, which won him critical acclaim. Jab We Met was a turning point and became his first box office hit. The success of Love Aajkal and Rockstar have made him sought after director. Put your hands together for Imtiaz Ali. I now invite Mr. Alyque Padamsee. Mr. Alyque Padamsee, the father of Indian advertising, guru of communications, and the guru of English theatre in India. He has been conferred the Padamsee Award by the President of India and is also the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award for Theatre from the Sangeet Natak Academy. Mr. Alyque Padamsee, please give him a big hand. Ashoke Viswanathan, please come on the stage. Mr. Ashoke Viswanathan is a three-time National Award-winning filmmaker. His films are screened widely in India and abroad and included in international film festivals. He is the president of the Eastern India Film Directors Association and visiting faculty at FTII, Pune, Tufts University, Boston, Monmouth University, New Jersey, and the Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, Kolkata. He is the author of the book on Bengal in the Century of Cinema and Beyond, published by Information and Cultural Affairs Department of the Government of West Bengal. Vikramaditya Motwane will join us a little later, and I now invite Dr. Ira Bhaskar. Dr. Ira Bhaskar is Professor Cinema Studies and Dean of the School of Arts and Aesthetics at JNU. She has been associated with Film Society activity for over 25 years and has taught film study courses at Delhi University, Jamia Millia Islamia and the Habitat Center, New Delhi. She is a visiting faculty at FTII Pune, Whistling Woods International Film School, Mumbai, University of Pavia, Italy, Columbia University, New York, and York University, Canada. Thank you.
Good evening all. And well, for all practical purposes, I am actually a stopgap arrangements. So thank you so much for making me part of this beautiful evening, because Sunil Bhaskar unfortunately is not well, and therefore I'm here. I would have been here anyways, because who would miss out such an interesting evening when we have very, very distinguished panelists out here who are going to talk about many aspects of Indian cinema. Because let's admit one very important thing, India is, for all practical purposes, the remotest part of India for all practical purposes is actually impacted by Bollywood. We have just been discussing the impact of cinema on Indian psyche and Indian masses. Much as we talk about, for example, the psychology, or much as we talk about the social impact of Indian cinema, but in the recent times, for example, is there a better movie than Three Idiot to bring parents and children together? Was there a time, wasn't there a time for all practical purposes, if you really recall, when we never really used to look at our children as our friends? Or did we ever try to understand what their aspirations were? Similarly, many such events along the way, while you have commercial cinemas which are typically symbolism of dance, music, love, etc., and suddenly along the way you have something called Rock On, which really shakes you at the bottom and makes you think, hey, is it something which I really live for? Or this is something which I should live for? So there are many such aspects of Indian cinema which essentially impact our lives on a day-to-day level, much as we do not realize it or we do not want to do it. But at the same time, it also is all about hard work. It is about that pain that everyone linked to cinema has to take, has to endure. And I'm sure the panelists would discuss on many of those aspects of Indian cinema, because at the end of the day, what we see for 2.5 hours or 3 hours on the celluloid screen, there is significantly larger amount of work which goes behind it. So I wouldn't really take too much of time, because this is an evening which calls for almost taking to us a level which we can call in Jamshedpur history an historical evening, where we have such distinguished panelists. And I, for all of you, thank you, thank all of them, thank everybody, people those who have been behind this wonderful evening, Jenny, and of course supporting team. And for Jamshedpur, this is the evening if you really want to understand the India cinema. Thank you so much for making me part of this wonderful evening. Thank you.
I now invite Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, founder member of the SPP, to take this evening's program forward. Mr. Gautam Mukherjee.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, panelists. Just a few little structural elements for the evening. Each panelist will address you. You're free to ask questions immediately thereafter. Okay? There will be a question-answer session at the end, but what happens is normally people forget something, so it's better that you come forward and ask your question immediately when the panelists complete their session. And I want to make a request to my friends in the media. When a panelist takes his or her position, you're most welcome to take your photographs, but please, once they start speaking, you will have to remain there because you're obstructing the audience. Okay? Please. So once the person starts speaking, it's like a cricket match. Once the bowler starts his run-up, you can't get up on the side screen because it disturbs the batsman. So please, after the speaker concludes, you're most welcome to take photographs again. Okay. Anything? So we begin with Imtiaz today. He's a local boy. Jenny's already given the introduction, but I've got a personal selfish request, which I hope he'll keep. We have a lot of students here, and he's a Jamshedpur ex-student. We've had enormous amount of problems in not only in Jamshedpur, all over the country, in career counseling. Particularly in Jamshedpur, parents seem to feel that the world has come to an end if the kid is not in IIT or in a medical school. And it creates enormous tension, enormous problems, enormous psychological, it decimates the kid completely with this kind of thinking. Imtiaz is probably the best example of what happens if you pursue your dreams, and more importantly, what happens if your parents love you for it. So if Imtiaz can say something on that after he talks about the relevant subject for the evening, I invite Imtiaz.
Good evening, everyone. So I think I've been asked to speak for not more than 15 minutes. And I'm going to look at your faces. The moment I start getting boring, you should indicate to me and I'll sit down. And the topic of discussion is, of course, 100 years of cinema in this country. And I know it's a big deal and everything, but I really can't relate to a world, or I cannot really relate to India without cinema. I can't really comprehend how it was when there was no cinema in this country. I don't know how it's going to be when cinema would end. I'm lucky to be born at this time when we are celebrating 100 years of cinema. For me, I've always wanted my romance to be like Qayamat se Qayamat tak. I've always wanted a girlfriend like Bhagyashri. I have wanted my parents to be like the parents of Avatar, I think. And I've wanted my brothers to be like Akbar and Anthony. So I really can't, I think, and initially when we used to watch movies, there was this, we had to lie to our parents and to go and hide and go into the cinema theater. And even in our homes, film magazines would never be allowed. In fact, I've carried that tradition in my personal home also. Film magazines are not allowed. But somehow the one change that I have noticed in these 20-30 years that I have been cognizant to cinema in the country, that people have become more permissive. They have started to accept, and my mother just pointed out that even in school quizzes you have topics on films, so it's not really supposed to be something intellectually dwarfed. So, and that's, I think, the point. We have begun to recognize the influence of cinema in our lives. And I do feel, and I think the most important thing that I can say to you here is that cinema in our country is definitely the most influential vehicle. There is no bigger influence, I think, not even religion, not anything, as influential cinema has been. And I have made 5 movies. I'm trying to make my 5th film, but I think my involvement in cinema, with cinema, is always going to be that of the viewer, because I'll always have watched more movies than I could make. So this is sounding a little boring. I think I should now concede to your request and talk about. Okay, so now since I'm standing in Jamshedpur and talking about films, let me talk about Karim Mansion. Let me talk about these 2 cinema theaters, Jamshedpur Talkies and Karim Talkies, which were in the same compound, back to back. And there was a whole, it still is, unfortunately the cinemas are not running, but there was a whole marketplace around it. And if you missed out the posters that were around and you just went straight to the salon where people used to come to get their haircuts, you would know which movies were running or which stars were acting in those movies, because all people coming over there would be asking for either a Jitendra hairstyle or a Shashi Kapoor hairstyle or an Amitabh Bachchan hairstyle in most cases. That was a time when everybody around would be roaming around wearing the same brooding expression as Amitabh Bachchan at that time. And I remember once what had happened is that there was, in the interval time in Jamshedpur Talkies, when most people were out, there was a slide of the film Giraftar that played. And that showed Amitabh Bachchan holding with his hands in handcuffs. And that was all. Giraftar, coming soon. There were not more than 50 people in the theater at that point of time, yet some 25 chairs were broken. There was a loud uproar as though some rioting has begun in the theater, and 20 chairs were broken. Now these chairs are actually solid wood chairs, and they are on an iron beam which is riveted into another, but I had the opportunity of telling Amitabh Bachchan recently that this had happened. And so he said, oh, I'm not aware of such incidents taking place in the country because of my movies. Said that, yeah, it's no wonder, because I'm sure by that time you weren't really living in Allahabad. So such, I think, is the influence of cinema, and I have been so vastly influenced by it. Now that I'm older, I look back at my life, and I have done all the filmy things that my parents had asked me not to do. It is just lucky that somehow, because of some blessing, I found my way, and there was much less career counseling available at that point of time. Because of hanging around and living in Karim Mansion for a long time, I had to repeat the year. I failed in the 9th standard. I had to repeat the year. And at that point of time, I used to try to grow my hair longer and look more like a hero. So it was a very filmy phase which never got over. But the point is that I had come to Jamshedpur recently, and this is taking on your point, sir. And it had reported the highest number of attempts to suicide by children in school. And I am actually perhaps the wrong example, because there was a time when I was really bad in studies, and I had to repeat a year, I had to go through the humiliation. But what I have to say that is to everybody over here is that I am still here, and it is possible to carry on and do what you want to do if you have belief. If you have belief and if you decide what you want to do. I think it's a very loser thing to do, to take the other way, and and more than anything else, I find that parents are so narrow-minded. They do not really understand even the opportunities that are available in this world. In fact, I would say that being from IIT is not as lucrative as 1,000 other career options are. But to begin with, parents will have to see and recognize that, and not. I think I've been very lucky. My parents knew that they have been, they are from a generation before, so they are not aware of the options or life as it exists right now. So they saw the world through my eyes, so to speak. So as I grew into the world, I knew what was available and I could choose from there. I would encourage more parents to do that and not impose the restrictions of their own lives and times on their children. So I've said very many meaningful things now. And I would, if there is anything that anybody would like to ask, I think this is the time. Cinema Paradiso. So, Miss Ira is somehow and strangely aware of the fact that there was a time when I used to sneak into Jamshedpur talkies and Karim talkies, and there was this gentleman, as you know, called Happu Bhai. And Happu Bhai was the projectionist. And he used to, at that time, we used to physically unload and load the reels and join them together so that the sound would kind of go in one flow. And there was this small hole from there from where you could watch the film. So even more than being in the theater and watching the film, I liked being in the projection room and watching it. When I was very small, I wasn't let in. But gradually, by having a very innocent face and by wanting to help, whenever the projectionist used to try to lift the reel, I would go and help him out. I would also try to help him load it. And gradually he trusted me a little more. And all the time that I used to go, I used to actually, when most people used to go into that cabin next to the projectionist and watch the film from there, I would remain. I would come out and I would be in the projection room trying to make friends with the projectionist and stand over there. I thought it was the coolest thing to do. One reel would run for 20 minutes and the projectionist would light up a BD and sit over there and smoke that, and he would know that now the reel is going to go. So even at a time when I couldn't comprehend or understand the whole movie, I understood a culture of entertainment and a certain power that lived in that theater space, which was dark and you had to notice it, and everyone felt at that point of time that they are the hero and the heroines on stage. So I was extremely lucky that went into my psyche, and I can never really get that out of my system. So and now when I go into a cinema theater and I find that sound running from a film that has been made by me, it is the most enchanting experience of my living. So as Sahir had said, that what life has given me, this is my way of returning it back.
Any
Yes, sir.
See, whatever you said right now here, what I could infer from that you are here to promote cinema industry, right? Okay, in a way. So do you think most of the people will agree to me, we don't have platform over here? Where people don't know how to, who to, where to.
You know, there are so many people, ma'am. I'd like to not be very polite over here. I'm from this city. I've stood and I've done theater plays all over, and whatever was available. What I'd like to tell you is that it will not get easier. People who want to get into media, want to get into films, will have to find their own way.
That's
Film
the
industry.
only place now. Everybody has to go to Mumbai then. I mean,
Sorry?
local base pay, you should have something where
You will have to find
upcoming.
a way. It will not get easier. You'd better accept and understand that.
Okay.
And I think there is that initial preparation phase is necessary. It is not very accessible. It has never been. You know, all the thousands and lakhs of people who've come from different parts of the country have made it with more difficulty than exists right now. So the
That's
film
what
industry has
reason
run.
behind is this: parents take it easier way. Parents should be, parents promote their children to study because that's a safe side.
Yeah.
Because the lack of the platform,
Yeah. So
isn't it? So
the
I don't know.
platform
I'm not
doesn't
saying you
work.
have to do something about it, but something should be taken care of. To give the platform to the children.
Sure, but that's
Yeah,
the
sure,
case
ma'am.
with everything. Yes. So,
Like the kind of, number of schools we have here, we don't have a platform here for the cinema industry. Isn't it? That's what I want to say. Yeah.
over here. Imtiaz has been very humble. Perhaps that has created the sense that it's come easy, but it's not. I'd like to tell you, because there are so many children here, and it's such a major problem for our city, and what you are mentioning is such a critical element in that problem. You're representing the parental love and affection to take care. But what happens is, this taking care puts a child in a prison with bars, the bars created by parents.
Right.
And they are absolutely decimated. It's not being safe, it's not taking care, it's killing them mentally. They may have a few thousand coming in as a salary package, but they are dead.
Yeah.
Now let me tell you, when we counsel, we take it forward, and Imtiaz is an example of that. Dr. Howard Gardner of Harvard University coined the term MI, Multiple Intelligence Theory.
Okay.
He said all of us have this train running through our brain with different compartments. There's no first class, second class, AC first class, AC third, AC second. They're all the same. But some people have different compartments throwing up lights. So, and Einstein had logic, but Tendulkar or Bradman had locomotive. Satyajit Ray or Imtiaz would have spatial intelligence. Now, if a child has spatial intelligence, there's fashion design, there's architecture, there is film photography, direction, he understands space. He is exceptionally gifted, and that being gifted is something which society could have steamrolled over had not his parents supported him.
Yeah, right.
That's what the sum total.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other? Yes. Yes. That gentleman over there first. Yes.
While they are struggling with the mic, I'd like to say that I'm not saying that there should not be a platform. I'm saying that those people who want to make it and reach somewhere should not wait for it. Because if you get into complaining and whining, that's all you will do all your life.
Yeah.
Good evening to the panelists, Imtiaz sir. Sir, as of now, I have seen 5 of your films, and all of the films, they consist of either Ranbir Kapoor or probably Shahid Kapoor.
You better ask an intelligent question after taking so much time, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to ask one question. How would you promote an artistic films in India? 100 years of cinema, of Indian cinema, great. But how would you promote an artistic films? Because artistic films, these are never shown, or probably very less of them are shown in Sony, Star, Z's, etc., etc., etc. So you as a director or you as a producer, one day if you'll be a producer and I be the director of a film, how would you promote an artistic film? This is my question.
What you're saying is very relevant, but we also have to understand that cinema is the most expensive art form, at least that I know. If you have a thought that you want to express or enjoy, you can do it by many cheaper ways, like just write it down as a story or make a painting, etc. If you want to make cinema, you borrow money from other people. It is inconceivable that cinema will continue and thrive if that money is not returned to those people that it's borrowed from. You have to accept that. No amount of intellectual wizardry can make cinema survive if it doesn't pay back. So, and also by definition, it is a mass-based mean of communication. So it should reach out to a lot of people. It has to be popular. And once it is, you will see that your stories will find more acceptance with the producers and with the distributors. So I think that's what you wanted to really bring out, how a particular film which is artistic needs to be promoted, depends on the merits of that particular film. But the mentality should not be very elitist. You should reach out to people. You shouldn't think that I'm James Bond and my stories nobody should understand.
Can we have the last question? Yeah. No. We'll give you a question. And then
good evening. I am Dr. Basu. I'll be asking
evening,
a slightly sensitive question. You have mentioned that Bollywood and Indian cinema, more so Bollywood, is the most influential thing on the Indian people. Now, I understand that Bollywood is not responsible for rearing up of children and adolescents, but do you think that throughout the generations in which Bollywood cinema shows that a boy is running after a girl, sings a song, tries some teasing, do you think that Bollywood is responsible for incidents in the upward trend of rapes that we find in our country?
This I've never understood all my life, Dr. Basu, where we are also blamed at the same time of being simplistic and asserting a certain moral code where good almost in a very simplistic manner ultimately vanquishes the evil. I don't understand why we are not blamed for turning people more to the path of good. You know, how can you in movies show somebody winning over evil without showing evil? I would feel that cinema that I have seen has provided very easy prototypes. The good bhabhi, the villain getting vanquished. I have always grown up thinking, in fact, I think that the other thing that I missed out in my speech is that movies perhaps is the most easily accessible and easy to understand code of moral conduct for our country. And in most cases you will feel that, you will see that evil is punished and the good is the victor. So I have not understood why film people are always blamed for all the ills going on in society, saying that, you know, there are rapes that are on the increase. I don't understand, I don't know any movie which has actually glamorized rape or has even shown any rapist getting away with it. It's the villain who rapes. Who wants to be like villains? Most people would want to be like heroes who never rape, who look down upon it. So I do think that to a large extent we are being given the credit of something we don't deserve as far as that's concerned.
The last question before we move to the...
Hi Imtiaz. Taking off from where you ended now. I think the Indian cinema shows a very simplistic view of life. Now let's take your example and put you in Amir Khan's Three Idiots. And you were the filmmaker and replacing the photographer in the movie, the boy who does photography. Do you get me? Three Idiots, Amir Khan, the photography friend, and one more boy.
Okay.
And you were the filmmaker in that movie, not doing the photography.
Okay.
And now your parents do not allow you to do photography, and they want you to get into IIT. And Amir Khan walks into Karim mansion, tries to convince your parents that let him have his say. Let him live his life. And they allow you. And after a few years, Imtiaz is not sitting there. He's sitting at the back as a failure filmmaker.
Correct.
Right? Now, I am not supporting what the parents are doing. What I'm trying to say is actually that the parents do not allow their children to go offbeat in careers because of a lack of social support system. So take the trodden path, you see. And if they give an example, Imtiaz is so successful with filmmaking, they have a counter argument, that's one Imtiaz, 1,000 failures.
That's
so if
true.
there's a movie, Three Idiots, where Imtiaz fails as a filmmaker.
Maybe you have your question.
Yes. Can you make a movie where it shows reality that there are 1,000 such failures and yet life is okay for them even after failing?
You've got a very valid point. I understand
I'll just say it for
I
the
understand
parents.
your point. I don't think it's a question. I think what you're pointing out, I'll amplify. What he's trying to say is that it sounds all very good if you see the case of a person who's doing something good already. But for, let's say, every Shah Rukh Khan, there are also thousands and thousands of people in Bombay who didn't become Shah Rukh Khan because just the pyramid is very, very steep, and they became RTO agents, and they became, basically didn't become Shah Rukh Khan. So is it possible to actually say that even after failing on that count, somebody lived a happy life, or perhaps perhaps a happier life? Can a movie be made? Of course a movie can be made. I'm not going to make it though, right now.
We'll come back to the question answer session again, and wanted to thank Imtiaz. Wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope I have not taken too much time. I had so much to say that I thought the process of elimination took time.
You can take all the time.
Yeah.
That's your prerogative.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, friends. Friends, I just want to say, I was going to talk about films, and I will, but just since Imtiaz touched on it, and I thought it was an important topic, how do you get into this world? I was born of very rich parents, and when I went to college, at the age of 17, I fell in love with a girl, and a couple of years later, I told my parents I want to marry that girl. They said, don't be stupid. she's already married. I said, no, she's getting a divorce. You're going to marry a divorcee? Are you mad, son? Are you crazy? I said, no, I'm not in crazy. I'm crazy in love. Yes, I want to marry her. Well, if you want to marry her, you'll have to leave this house. And at that time, I was still in college. I had no job. And then I was faced with a peculiar dilemma that a lot of you will be facing. If you want to do what you want to do, what your heart tells you to do, you will have to make certain sacrifices. You will have to be absolutely, as Imtiaz rightly said, determined to do it in spite of all the obstacles, in spite of having to climb Mount Everest without oxygen. You will have to do it. So what I did was, I phoned up a friend and I said, you were in journalism, you joined advertising, how is it? He said, oh, you're in the theatre, you'll do very well, go. Try it. I went, I did a test, I got in as a trainee at the princely sum of rupees 300 a month. I started on 300 a month and I worked and worked and worked and worked, and finally I was getting a decent salary, and then I asked the girl to marry me. She was by that time, she was struggling. And we got married, and my parents said, well, fine, you left the house, and now you want to live on your own, live on your own. And so I lived on my own, and the other side of it was that I was in the theatre, and because my parents supported me, there was a roof over my head, there was food on the table, I was getting an education. I then realized that I wanted to continue theatre. I had a good job, but advertising is a very, very, very hard taskmaster. People think it's all glamour, it's not. You work from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, sometimes till 12 midnight. But I said, I'm never going to give up the theatre, and my entire life, I've done now 72 plays, my entire life has been working 18 hours a day, even till today. It means if you want to do something, and I wanted to do theatre, I did not want to do advertising. I wanted to do theatre, and I wanted to get married. So I said, whatever it is, if you've got the determination, if you've got iron in your soul, you will be able to do what you want to do, whether your parents want you to do it or not, whether you have to work 18 hours a day or not. And a question I'd love to ask Imtiaz is, Imtiaz, are you making a very big living as a director? I mean, a Bollywood director has paid millions? We survive. Get it? No. Movie stars make millions. Huh? But the directors and the script writers and all don't. I know this because I've worked with so many of them in advertising films. Anyway, let me get back to the topic. So, if you want to do what you want to do, you've got to make sacrifices. And there's no easy way. There's no easy way. Yes, there is an easy way. Huh? Imtiaz, would you agree? If you're a Khan or a Kapoor, that is the easy way. Yeah. Okay. I'm talking about the future. The topic is what, is the 100 years, what's the next 100 years, or at least the next 10 years or 15 years going to be in Indian cinema? Now, I'm taken back to the new wave that started somewhere around in the 70s with a film called Bhuvan Shom, made by Mridal Sen from this part of the world, from East India. And it started a trend of people now beginning to say that yes, cinema could have a, let's say, there could be more than just running around trees, singing and dancing. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl. There's something more in it. And it started a trend. But today's audience, what does today's audience want? The young audience, remember, we're talking about 50% of the population. As we sit here this evening, 50% of the population of India is under the age of 25. We have 500 million people under the age of 25. What is it that they want? I was asking myself the question. I said, do they want skin, sex? Do they want sex? Do they want romance? Do they want really strong characters? Remember, the greatest villain of all time was Amjad Khan, his Gabbar Singh. I mean, he actually, CDs were taken out, in those days they were called LPs, were taken out on his dialogues, not singing. And he became such a huge star. In fact, I even employed him as one of our brand ambassadors for Britannia biscuits. believe it or not. Gabbar Singh, a villain. So it's not that villains are not appreciated. Amrish Puri, who was a great villain, and he had a tremendous following, tremendous. And these icons suddenly take on a persona that is bigger than anyone can imagine. And I agree, the cinema, one of the reasons cinema is so powerful is that the images you actually see on the cinema screen are larger, 100 times larger than life. So in a sense they are godlike. And as you know, in South India, temples are also dedicated to various movie stars, including Kumkum, who came in fact from Bollywood and made a success of her career. They are more than normal human beings, and we all have to realize that this is the magic of cinema. It'll be a sad day when cinema finally comes down to your cell phone screen size, which is not far away, by the way, not far away. So I'm saying, what do you need for the new cinema of tomorrow? What do you need for the new wave? We've seen films that have a popular element and yet have some kind of significance in your lives. You've seen Lagan, which was a great hit, and also was, I would say, made in an intelligent manner. I don't know how many people here saw Lagan. Please raise your hands. Wonderful, fantastic. Now that was a film that had a meaning. It made us feel proud to be Indians. It may have been a little, let's say, simplistic, may have been a little corny, but at least it had a theme. How many people over here have seen the film Gandhi? And also very good. Now there was a film that a lot of people told me was not just a film, it was an experience. They went through an experience and they were proud to be Indian. I know my daughter, when I told her to see it in 1982, I said, darling, you must go and see this film, Gandhi. She said, no, Dad, it's about Mr. Gandhi and we learn about him in school and it's so boring, it goes on, ahimsa and this and that. And I said, go and see it because your father is in it. Oh, all right, Dad, since you're in it, we'll go and see it. She went with her friends. I picked her up after the show and her eyes were shining. They were like, stars. She said, Dad, you never told me that Mr. Gandhi was such a great man. I'm so proud to be an Indian. And that's the first time she ever said that. And it was a film that did it. And films can do that. They have a mesmerizing quality. But I'm saying to you that are we making enough films that will inspire our children? I will say that when you say Bollywood, it's become a kind of word for corny, simplistic. You do get the occasional, I will agree, you do get, films, particularly Amir Khan, I think is a wonderful man. He's got this popularity and yet he makes films which are reasonably significant. And Three Idiots was a very good example. And then you've got films that I remember, I can tell you, and because I'm the father of someone who's in the film industry, my youngest daughter Shahzan, I have to, per se, whether I like it or not, go to at least one Bollywood film every week. Because she says, Dad, you must see this one, tell me what you think of it, etc., etc. So I'm dragged there in handcuffs. But there are films that had powerful influences. Sholay. Sholay is the only movie, Hindi movie, that I've seen 3 times. I don't know why. I can't quite explain why, but it was mesmerizing and I saw it 3 times. And there were others. Now recently, Lunchbox, a small film, and this I think is the new wave. Films like that, and because of the multiplex, we now can actually, you can earn your money in the first weekend because the ticket prices are so high. You can recoup your losses, as Imtiaz was talking about to you, sir, that in the end, films are very expensive to make. And unless you can return, what they call ROI, return on investment, if you can't return that, then that's the end of you as a filmmaker. If you make 2 or 3 flops in a row, forget it. They'll never use you again. And by flops, they don't mean critical flops, they mean very much box office successes or flops. But there are. For instance, there's a film that went to the Cannes Film Festival this year, a short film called Miss Lovely, made by a very young man whom I happen to know, Ahluwalia, Ashim Ahluwalia, and suddenly he's now getting some offers and people are beginning to notice. as long as you can make a film that's talked about, even if it doesn't make a lot of money, there's a chance for the new wave. I go back some years to the 70s. There was a new wave at that time, as I said, Bhuvan Shom. And then filmmakers like Shyam Benegal came into it with many films that he made, and they were a mixture of looking at characters realistically and yet giving them a lot of drama. Because if you don't have drama, neither plays nor films can ever succeed. The audience wants to be involved, mind and heart is very important. So you've got films like that have, and then that new wave, and I think the greatest, I was talking to my friend Ashoke Viswanathan today, and we were talking about the new wave in those days, and Govind Nilani, I think, is one of the best filmmakers I've ever seen in India. He made Akrosh, a terrific film, and then he made Tamas as a TV series, which was very, very talked about and also had huge audiences. And remember, a TV film, we may look down on TV, but a TV film, when it's shown and it's a popular film, can reach an audience of 100 or 200 million people in one night. And as Amitabh and I were discussing a couple of years ago, that is more audiences than have seen all Amitabh's films together. So the cinema, yes, has power, but television is coming up with the mass power. And we're noticing that politicians are now beginning to realize that and using that. But as I say, the new wave will have to concentrate not only on directors and actors. Why the new wave in France? La Nouvelle Vague, it was called. That's the new wave in French. Many years ago, somewhere around the late 50s, the beginning of the 60s, they produced directors who became world famous and popular, amazingly. Francois Truffaut, Godard, and Louis Malle. They became international names because they had films that talked about the human condition, but it talked about it in dramatic terms. And as long as you can do that, you will always grab an audience, But for that, you need not only brilliant directors, but all the new wave in the French cinema, they were all also writers. And what is the essence of anything, whether it's a good story? If you want a good story, you have to have a very good writer who can write characters and can write dialogue, whether you're in the theater or whether you're in the cinema. And I think what we lack today is good writers, people who can write films. I don't know how many of you have seen two films which I consider brilliantly written, and they were very popular, and at the time that they were made, they didn't have big stars in them. They became stars later on. One was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, by a very famous actor and a non-famous actor. Robert Redford at that time was unknown, and he played the Sundance Kid. And it became a smash hit. Or a film like Bonnie and Clyde. Again, small budget film, but became a worldwide hit. So what I'm saying is that if we are going to have a new cinema, a new Indian cinema, I think the old Indian cinema will go on forever. Singing and dancing is part of our culture. And as was said very rightly yesterday, it is part of our ethos. We can't do without it. And I'm just thinking that some of the new wave cinema filmmakers should be saying, but why can't we also use song and dance in our films and yet tell a serious story? Does it always have to be an interruption? Can't it be? Shakespeare used song, by the way. Almost all his plays, his greatest plays, always had songs in them. I don't know how many of you know that. Othello has songs in it, Hamlet had a little playlet in it which was done in a kind of blank verse. But many of his plays had songs, because at that time singing was a very important part of theatre. So our new wave directors like Dipakar Banerjee, again from this part of the world, Anurag Keshav, Ritesh Batra, Anand Gandhi, who made the Ship of Theseus, which is done very well abroad in all the film festivals. I've mentioned Ahluwalia, Kiran Rao. Women directors are coming into it now. Kiran Rao, Zoya Akhtar, and many others will soon be joining them. The cinema is wide open if you can tell a good story, and a good story needs a good writer. And unless we can encourage good script writing, I don't think there'll be a chance for any new wave of Indian cinema. And that is what killed, I think, the old wave, because after a few successes, we got brilliant filmmakers like Mani Kaul, but the films were heavy. The films were intellectual in the highest sense of the word, and cinema is not an intellectual medium. Cinema is a mass medium, and I don't mean it has to mass means that millions have to see your movie, but at least 100,000, 200,000. You cannot be shoved into the early morning slot, at 9 a.m. They show your films. They show Satyajit Ray films in Bombay, the home of Bollywood. They show them at 9 a.m. in the morning. Who's going to go to the movies at 9 a.m. in the morning? But that's a slot that's empty, so why not put in arty filmmakers? But that's not why I'm talking about the new wave. I'm talking about a new wave that is vigorous, vibrant, and understands today's audience. And today's audience is very, 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 very different from yesterday's audience. And I'm not just talking about in the cities, the big metros, Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, and so on. I'm talking even in small towns, people are beginning to appreciate a good story, well told, made in a fashion that people get gripped, that their mind and their heart are together, and they get gripped and they want to come and they tell their friends about it. And word of mouth, whatever the marketing and advertising boys say, and you need that, by the way, to launch a film, you need huge budgets, but in the end the film will not run unless word of mouth is good, and that is very important, What's interesting to me, and was said I think earlier by our moderator today, and that is that movies are part of our life. We often will find ourselves at the dining table with our friends or our family talking about the last movie we saw. It's become part of the conversation. To such an extent that I'm saying to you, and I think you'll notice it, it's at the back of your mind, let me bring it to the front, the Bollywoodization of India. You can't put on the TV, you can't see an ad film, you obviously in a cinema you expect to see Bollywood, you can't open a newspaper, you can't you can't watch a cricket match without movie stars and Bollywood being there in some kind of presence. I'm sorry that, and I said, no, this is not due to Dharani Ghosh. Remember that, Ashoke? Yeah. I don't know why the lights are going. I'd love to have the house lights on, please. I'd like to see the audience. Which is absolutely forbidden in cinemas, right? Can't have the house lights on. But many of our plays today are now with the house lights on because we want to see the interaction between the audience and the stage. So what I'm saying is marketing and advertising are very important for your opening weekend. And they say today you can recover your costs at multiplexes on an opening weekend. And I would say to the new filmmakers, don't just think of scripts. Watch what's going on TV, particularly in America recently. I don't know how many of you know that you can buy serials now. One of my favorite serials is Californication. Has anyone here, raise your hands, who've seen Californication? No one? How sad. I have to take out my hanky now. It's really very sad. Anyway, the greatest thing that's happening now, and from Hollywood it'll come to Bollywood. Hollywood is being hit by the fact that serial makers are now selling their 13-episode serials. And you can spend the whole night, you can start at 9 o'clock at dinner time, and at 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. you're still watching it because it's so gripping. I think our new filmmakers need to start studying these forms. The other one is, of course, what is happening on the net, when a video goes viral on the net, on YouTube, the famous Gangnam Style was a video, music video. It suddenly went viral, and within a few weeks, it had an audience of 1 billion. 1 billion. There are about 4 movies that have ever crossed the billion mark, and that's in dollars, but I don't know in audiences if any movie would ever cross the billion mark. And 1 billion viewers. So they're doing something that is got their finger on the popular pulse. And I think this is extremely important. That if a good filmmaker, and I think Imtiaz is a good filmmaker. I was telling him just before we started the film, I loved of his was Love Aajkal. And my daughter will vouch for that because, you know, she and I have discussed it. And I was so surprised to see a Bollywood film and a popular film. It had, you know, two reasonably well-known stars. And it was a hit. But what was interesting is, for once, you know, it was not boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl. It was boy meets girl, boy loses girl, and boy never marries girl. Which is a big change from what we normally accept of Bollywood, the formula film. And I'm saying if the formula can be broken gently, keep the song and dance. To me, all my American friends say, thank you for sending me videos of your films. We have the fast forward button and we wind on to the music and dance sequences, we skip the rest. Yeah, truly. And so what else is MTV but all the song and dance put together? And you don't have the rather clichetic, boring, corny stories in between. But I'm saying the story is the reason people go to the cinema. And as long as the story is good and gripping, whether you're doing Lagan or you're doing Lunchbox, big and small movies will always find an audience. And I would say that they've got to be aware, the new filmmakers, about all the new kinds of digital media that are springing up. Yes, okay. If the new wave wants to equal Bollywood, we will need a new wave of low-priced multiplexes. Multiplexes have proved that there is an intelligent audience in India who wants to see films, not just entertainment in capital letters, but entertainment with some kind of mind appeal and heart appeal. And if that comes in, there's going to be a revolution also in the making of films, which quite rightly is very costly, but now with digital video cameras, digital movie cameras, the cost has come down drastically.
Thank you. I think what we'll do is we'll keep the questions till the end because we've got 3 more speakers.
Yeah.
And,
good idea. Good idea. So excellent idea. Yeah.
He's spared for the time being. You can have him at your...
No, prepare your darts. Yes. Yeah. I'll be happy to be the target.
I'd like to welcome the adopted son of Jamshedpur, Vikramaditya Motwane, Udan, Lutera. I'm going to request Ashoke Viswanathan to present his views and maybe throw a small googly at him, which hopefully won't bowl him. You know, how many of you have seen Ghare Baile by Satyajit Ray? Okay. Now if you remember the division of ideology between the Victor Banerjee character and the Soumitra character, Tagore and particularly Satyajit Ray were for the Victor Banerjee character. Surprisingly, you know, most filmmakers would go for the rebel, but they went for the Zamindar, who showed greater responsibility in looking after his people. I came across a letter, a 9-page letter, written by Tagore to Ashoke's grandfather, where the entire philosophy of that story, Ghare Baile, is written. What constitutes the real Swadeshi? What constitutes being in love and doing something for the country? It's 9 pages of almost angry outpouring. In fact, I found it this morning on the net. And it's absolutely beautiful. Kalidas Nag, grandfather, great scholar, great, historian, and his father taught me English. You have
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A wise man once said that the pursuit of truth need not be achieved only through the mind, The fact that that wise man happens to be me does not in any way detract from the essential validity of the statement. I'd like to say that cinema is something that appeals to all the senses, not just to the mind. Now, we had a very entertaining and informative lecture yesterday by Dr. Bhaskar. And I'd like to say that cinema began with magic and betrayal. Imagine that day which Dr. Bhaskar spoke of. 1895, 28th of December, in the basement of the Grand Cafe. Imagine that you're face to face with history, and two brothers, Louis and Auguste Lumière, they project a train entering a station. Do you know the reaction of the audience? The audience stood up because they thought the train was upon them. They had never seen a moving picture before. That was the beginning. That was the magic of it. But at the same time, along with Lumière, there was a man called Thomas Alva Edison, who invented a machine called the kinetoscope. Whereas Lumière had invented the cinematograph, Edison had invented the kinetoscope. And he's credited with the invention of cinema, only he didn't invent the kinetoscope. It was actually a little known technician working in his laboratory called W.K.L. Dixon, William Kennedy Laurie Dixon, who was unsung, unknown, and the history books don't have his name mostly, because the patent was taken out by Edison from his bioscope pictures. It was only much later in the centenary of cinema, in 1995, when a filmmaker called Eliseo Subiela made a very famous film called Remember to Tell Me the Next Time You Decide to Die, a surreal film in which he talks about the fact that it was this Dixon and his girlfriend Rachel. He makes it into a Spanish character, so Raquel, and it was he who actually invented the cinema. So cinema begins with betrayal, and it also begins with magic. So also in the history of Indian cinema, Dr. Bhaskar rightly pointed out that whereas we are celebrating the 100 years of cinema from 1913, we are making two assumptions, two very pertinent assumptions. One, that it's a history of feature films, because the first feature film is 1913, but before that there was a man called Hiralal Sen, whom Dr. Bhaskar so beautifully pointed out, who made short films, who made documentaries, who made filmed theater. In fact, he filmed Ali Baba. But unfortunately, in a devastating fire, all of his creations were destroyed, but that doesn't erase him from our consciousness. Hiralal Sen remains a pioneer. So therefore, this question of 100 years of cinema is a complicated question. I'd like to put this to the House, that at the very outset, we are celebrating 100 years of cinema, but the question is not a simple one. And to lead on from that, shall we say that while we talk of Bollywood, I hate that word, by the way, it seems so derivative. While we talk of Mumbai cinema, while we talk of the cinemas of the regions, shall we exclude totally the documentary? Shall we exclude the non-feature film? Shall we exclude the short film? Whereas it is a fact that many feature filmmakers have actually come from a short filmmaking background. I know that in Jamshedpur itself, there is a very strong short film movement. I know that organizations like Take 5 Communications and Center for Excellence have been organizing a short film festival for the last so many years. And Jamshedpur deserves credit for that, because the short film is a very interesting genre. There is a festival in Italy called the Capalbio Festival, which concentrates on only short films, and awards are given for those films. So will not the short film be part of the 100 years of cinema? They have to be. So also the documentary. After all, the documentary has a very rich and checkered history. The first film, as Dr. Bhaskar rightly pointed out, was an actuality. It was an actuality. The train entering the station at Ciota, the men playing bridge, workers leaving a factory. Actually, the Lumières had a photographic factory, and he, photographed workers leaving that factory. So if we began with reality, why should we exclude the documentary? I have had the unfortunate experience of being the chairman of the National Awards jury on some occasions. And one occasion, I was the chairman of the non-feature film jury. And the doorman introduced me as the chairman of the non-film jury, So the non-feature film is considered the non-film. that is the situation in which we are today. I'd like to make my first point that in the 100 years of cinema, we must look forward to more meaningful documentaries, more meaningful non-feature films, more meaningful short films, and I think Jamshedpur and centers like Jamshedpur have to take the first step in this regard. Do you agree? Do it. And what are these documentaries that have enthralled us over the ages? Ray himself, and Ray has been mentioned, made a documentary on Tagore called Rabindranath Tagore, which is a very important documentary. The great Sukhdev in 67 and 69 made so many meaningful documentaries. There have been documentaries which are so critical of the government. Documentaries made by Anand Patwardhan, Ram Ke Naam. And I think Anand Patwardhan is a key figure now that, Narendra Modi has been tipped to become the next Prime Minister. These documentaries are going to assume great importance because it's the political fabric of the country which is reflected in these documentaries. To answer Mr. Mukherjee's question about Tagore, yes, my grandfather, Dr. Kalidas Nag, who was a D.Lit from Sorbonne University, he was a Legion d'honneur recipient, well before Ray, of course, was a very close associate of Tagore. And somehow Tagore seemed to feel that the Swadeshi Andolan, as we knew it, was not misplaced. It had its moments and there was something that was required, but perhaps sometimes it degenerated into mindless violence. And that was what he was trying to show in his Ghore Baire, in his Char Adhyay, which was made into a very beautiful film by Kumar Shahani. If you will see that many of those Britishers who were actually killed were wrong people who were killed most of the time. Perhaps if they had taken more time to think about it and actually formulated their strategy, the whole nationalistic movement could have taken a different path. But as Alyque Padamsee so rightly pointed out, it was that one man, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, with his non-violent approach, who actually gave us independence. And we're really grateful to Dr. Richard Attenborough, who made a film on Gandhi. Gandhi should have got the Nobel Prize. In fact, the year he was nominated for the Nobel Prize, that was the year he died. He had been shortlisted earlier also. It's a tragedy. But to come back to the 100 years of cinema, my first point is short films, documentaries, future of Indian cinema. Second is the independent voice. This is of extreme importance. We are talking about big films, but what about the small films? The small films which are also good films, great films, feature films. In fact, I began my second film called Dialogue and Delirium, Kichu Songlap, Kichu Prolap, as a short film. I thought I'll make a short film, and it's a very strange story, completely crazy, almost as crazy in love as Alyque was in his youth. And I was in love with this short film, and I shot one day, and in those days of celluloid, I saw the rushes. And I was quite impressed by it. Every filmmaker is impressed by what he does. He's so biased. So I saw it, and I wrote the next scene. And then I shot it, and I projected, and I wrote the next scene. So I was shooting first and writing after. Perhaps it's the first film which is made first and then written. And suddenly I found that the film is making itself. It's becoming a documentary, and then it's becoming a feature film. And little did I know it became a feature film. And I told my friends, this is rubbish. Should I, show it anyway? It's complete madness. He says, no, it's madness. Call it that. Dialogue and Delirium. We did. And we, as a lark, sent it for the censors, and I thought the censors won't accept it. There were some very intimate scenes also, but the censors passed it, gave it a U certificate, and then I got bold. I said, let's send it to the Indian Panorama, and people said, no chance. This is not even a film. Sent it to the Indian Panorama, and guess who was at the jury? People like Sudhir Mishra and Ramesh Sippi, who were strong people in Bombay, and the film was selected for the Indian Panorama. We went mad and got even bolder and sent it for the national awards. It won the special jury prize and it won the national award too. So it's just craziness. So I think as Mr. Mukherjee rightly pointed out, as Imtiaz rightly pointed out, even if you're doing your own thing, even if you're in Jamshedpur, which is not Mumbai or a Calcutta or a Madras, do your own thing. If your heart is in the right place, the film will reach somewhere. I'm a great admirer of Udan, for example, which is storytelling at its best. It's not that Cannes and Berlin and Venice would only take esoteric material. And here I agree with Alyque again. Look at a film like Amour, which won the Golden Palm. It's straight storytelling, a Michael Haneke film with two actors like Trotino and Emmanuel Riva, just at each other's throats literally. Two people over the age of 80. And Uran too. Brilliant storytelling. He's done it again in Lutera, which I think is again a film which is good because of the pauses that it has. It lets you breathe. This is cinema. Cinema is not just drama, not just bang, 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 bang. It's a breathing, and I feel these films are very important. I won't take very much of your time. I'll quickly summarize what I have to say. I think that the documentary and the short film needs to be given great importance, that the independent voice has to be given importance, that the experimental and the avant-garde has to be given its place by the media and by the critics. And I'm grateful to people like Dr. Bhaskar and others at the JNU, because cinema studies in JNU and in Jadavpur University has gone a long way in promoting the kind of culture that can support the independent voice. Finally, I'd like to say that storytelling, after all, is the stuff that cinema is made of. In The Maltese Falcon by John Huston, the great Bogey says, the stuff that dreams are made of, in his gravelly voice. I do agree, it is storytelling. After all, Ray was a great storyteller. And he says of Mrinal Sen's Bhuvan Shom that the story works not because of its spiky syntax, but in spite of its spiky syntax. It's actually a story. And we have to tell good stories. But those stories could be original stories. They don't have to be introduction, complication, crisis, climax, resolution all the time. You could begin with the resolution, you know. Jean-Luc Godard, whom Alyque mentioned, was once asked, don't you have a beginning, a middle, and an end in your films? And he said, yes, I do, but they're not necessarily in that order. That's Godard for you. I'll end with a small story, and it's an anecdote for all those people who get carried away with too much of intellectual theorization. It's a danger. You know, there was Dr. Spock, who was an expert on child care, and you know, making a film is like bringing up a child. That's why I bring this metaphor in. And Dr. Spock was totally against corporal punishment. He didn't believe in beating up children. But one day he had to make some repairs to his house. So he had piled up a lot of cement in front of his house, and he saw that the street children were playing about, but he was very fond of these children, so he went into his house. But the children messed up the cement. So Dr. Spock came and says, children, please don't do that. We're going to build here, let the cement be. But the children didn't listen to him. They messed up the cement again. And now Dr. Spock was gradually beginning to lose it. And he said, children, don't mess up the cement, let it be. The children didn't listen, they messed up the cement yet again. And Dr. Spock lost it completely. He started picking up the children and thrashing them, beating them up. When a neighbor suddenly passing said, but Dr. Spock, I thought you didn't believe in corporal punishment. And Dr. Spock, amidst the howls of pain, says, my ideas hold in the abstract but not in the concrete. Thank you very much.
Mr. Motwane will take questions. But I want to make an intervention here on the theme that we had for this evening, the next 100 years of Indian cinema. Somewhere way back in my history, I'd done an MBA. So I'm going to take something out from there and share it with you for Indian cinema. Indian cinema is going through a major change, which you'll see over the next, forget the 100, you'll see it over the next 10, 20 years, the corporatization of Indian cinema. Parents who always thought cinema was below their child's vocational career can now look up because it's going to be a formalized industry. How does it work? You know, in the good old days when we were growing up, cinema funding was 10% a month interest, 120% a year. Now, 120% a year interest meant that it required enormous amount of black money. And that black money came from smuggling, it came from all the other activities, but people had access to capital, they used that capital, people took capital, and you made a movie. Every day was important. But 10% interest was what many filmmakers paid their finances. Today with corporatization, what's happening? The best example is Anil Ambani and Spielberg. The combination of that. How much does finance cost in the US? Suppose Mr. Motwane were to access that. Okay, there's a big problem with the dollar-rupee ratio, but how much would it cost? 4%? 4% a year. It's a lot better than 120% a year. But to access that 4%, what does he have to have? He must have an organization. An organization which is answerable to the public, to their shareholders. There's a balance sheet. There's an auditor. And you have Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young and KPMG have given brilliant reports on the future of Indian cinema, which is on the net. And we are not going to discuss that, but I hope some of the panelists would have touched on that. Because that is the future. And that is going to change radically the star system. Is going to also change. The gentleman who asked that question to Imtiaz about art cinema is going to be a lot easier to make art cinema. Why? Because of another factor which is coming with this corporatization. You are having almost 70% of some of the film's revenues coming from outside Indian shores. 70% of the revenues are from outside Indian shores. 30% from India. Now, those are the lucky films, but that's going to happen more. So themes are going to change. Themes will become global themes, humanitarian, international themes, themes which apply to anywhere. Yesterday we spoke of Raj Kapoor, Awara, China, the fact that people in Siberia, in Mongolia still relate to Indian films, Afghanistan, because they were international themes. They're not specifically Indian themes, and that's going to happen. And that means the Indian cinema industry is going to expand and expand and expand, because you're dealing with a huge body of people. Alyque said about 1 billion people. How many films have been seen by 1 billion people? It will happen. And that's an intervention I thought I'd make next.
Hello again. Lots of really interesting points have already been made, so I won't touch those. But there are 2-3 things that I want to say in connection with what has already been said. The first point that I want to make is the point that has been discussed at some length already, which is and connect that to the future of cinema. And Gautam has just talked about the fact that in today's world, in a global environment with the World Wide Web, there are possibilities for filmmaking that didn't exist even 20 years ago. So that's a really encouraging sort of context. We have to think of filmmaking in different ways, in different forms, not just in the big blockbusters of Bollywood, but in other ways. And I agree that there should be space for smaller films, documentary films, the independent voice, and so on. But it's not going to happen so easily. We have to come up with different kinds of exhibition strategies. We have to come up with different kinds of circulation practices. That's extremely important. There is no doubt that for a film to communicate, it needs a good story, it needs good acting, it must touch the right chords, emotional chords, without which films are not going to communicate, they're not going to have value. At the same time, I do want to say that while funding is available, while corporatization has enabled production in ways that we couldn't have imagined earlier, it's also true that there is still a stranglehold on exhibition. And I'm sorry to say that, because the multiplex, unfortunately, has not been a solution, and I beg to differ here. And the reason for that is that multiplexes in the, I don't know about Jamshedpur, but in the major cities are priced very high. We have lost the single screen. The multiplexes are eating up single screen theaters, and I guess I have a bit of a nostalgia for the single screen, the kind of theaters that Imtiaz talked about, because the single screen was a more democratic space than the multiplex is. The multiplex is out of reach for most people. And why is this important? This is important for two reasons. One, that cities where single screens still exist, those are valuable spaces. Those are valuable spaces of exhibition that need to be nurtured, that need to be encouraged, because they allow more audiences and more varied audiences than the multiplexes, which are expensive, highly priced, and cater to a particular kind of audience. So we may not have much control over that. I do want to make another point about the multiplex and then give what I think needs to be done. Multiplexes today are in the control of very, very, very big business. I'm very sorry to say that. So even a PVR, with its intervention called PVR Rare, actually makes films unavailable, and different films, independent voices, actually unavailable to most people. I'll give you an example. I went to see the untitled Karthik Krishnan project in Delhi in PVR Rare. It's a director's cut multiplex that is dedicated to independent voices, and the ticket price was 1,200 rupees each. There were 3 of us in the auditorium, and we were the only 3 who watched that film, because obviously nobody can afford 1,200 rupees for a ticket. So I'm afraid the multiplex is not the answer. At least the multiplex today and the multiplex in the control of big business is not the answer. The answer is smaller theaters that are, and I think here government has a big role to play, and corporate houses like Tata also have and could have a very big role to play, because smaller theaters which house, and this is not a new idea, it's an idea that goes back to the moment of the new wave. And you remember the Film Finance Corporation and its charter included the building of small theaters across the country, exhibition spaces where these films that were being financed by the Film Finance Corporation could be screened. The Indian New Wave died, I think, not because they weren't telling good stories, but because nobody was willing to release those films. They didn't find the audiences that would have wanted to see the films. And today, and why is this relevant today? It's relevant today because I think in this context, in this complex, and for the fantastic support that Tatas have actually given to this particular program and to yesterday's program, I think a visionary initiative could come even from corporate houses that wanted to support meaningful cinema, wanted to support independent voices, wanted to support short films, and give opportunities to all of you there, the young filmmakers in the making out there, to actually make films that are different, films that have something important to say, films that are made with passion, and they will communicate if you find the right audiences. And an effort has to be made by all sectors of society to actually put those structures in place. The initiatives that were envisioned in 1968-69 are not invalid today. They're equally relevant today and equally crying out for intervention. So that's important. But of course you may well say, what can we do about it? The young people may well say, what can we do about it? And I would say that what you can do about it is to actually, first of all, not feel daunted by the exhibition network, because of course films cost a lot of money. Of course the big budget film needs to be a hit in order to recover the money so that you get a chance to make films again. And if you are lucky, you have the lucky breaks. If you have good stories to tell, but also luck is very, very important, you may be able to make that intervention. At the same time, there is the web. There is the internet, And today's young filmmakers are cinephiliacs who are inspired not just by our cinema, but are inspired by global cinemas across the world. These are the films that they all see, and they have different ways of telling the story. And so, I would say to those young people who want to make an intervention, that go ahead, think of your projects, think of the stories that you want to tell, be committed to those stories. Everyone has talked about that. Be committed to those stories. Both Imtiaz and Vikramaditya were committed to the stories they wanted to tell and made those stories with passion and were able to actually make an impact. So do that, commit yourself to it, find ways. If your films are not being released in the regular outlets, find ways in which you can reach your films to audiences, because audiences are out there. Your films don't get to them. That is the problem. There are audiences. Today's audience is not the audience that was the audiences of the 50s and 60s. Today's audience is variegated. Today's audience is segmented. Today's audience, there are multiple audiences, and those audiences need to be reached. And I think that that all of us who are actually part of a larger film culture need to understand that these audiences exist, and we need to reach out to them. And there are many different ways, including in Jamshedpur, the ways that you have thought of. Film festivals are important. Jamshedpur, as I said yesterday, is a very important city because there was a strong film society movement there. Now that movement can generate its own momentum. It can circulate films. It can show films that are not shown elsewhere, and it can also contribute to making money. The point is, until the films are seen, how are you going to make money? How are filmmakers going to make money? It's extremely important that all kinds of practices, exhibition practices, are put in place so that films reach their audiences. And if that happens, certainly a new wave will be born. We already see signs of that in the cinema that India is producing in the many different languages. There's a lot of experimentation already taking place. There's experimentation not just in the avant-garde form. There's also a lot of experimentation within the mainstream, and there is a space today for different kinds of films. So I want to just emphasize two things, and I'll make one last point. Two things. One, make the kinds of films you want to with passion, with commitment. Two, attempt to make an intervention so that your films reach the audiences that exist out there. And finally, number three, film is not just one kind of activity. There are a number of professions around filmmaking, film production, film exhibition that are equally exciting, and those who are committed to film, all the young ones there. And I'm going back to the point with which Gautam began, which is that why is it that we are only looking at very traditional career options like engineering and like medicine and like the IAS or the IFS, which are the three, and have been three areas that most parents want their children to get. My kids are not in any of these professions, so I can say that with some confidence that
Neither are mine.
Yes, and I can say that with some confidence that there are many professions around cinema that are equally exciting, many career options out there that are equally exciting. It's just a question of taking up those options, qualifying yourself, and here I will emphasize film education, which is extremely important, something that I do, which is related to film production and to film exhibition. So educate yourself, go out there and follow your dream and do what will, and if you do that, I'm sure that careers that you will choose will become extremely beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me. I'm glad to be back. I haven't been here for about 3 years, and I'm so psyched. I actually hadn't planned to speak because I was told it's a panel discussion, but after Mrs. Bhaskar's speech, I do have a counterpoint to that, and I think I'm going to just say
Movie watching, when I grew up, we used to go to movies in single screen theaters. In Bombay, there was famously in the suburbs, there was Chandan, there was Gaiety Galaxy. If you went to town, there was Regal, there was Eros, there was Sterling. And I owe actually my entire film education to actually watching movies in these theaters. And the thing is that while you were watching, there was yes, I agree, there was a democracy to watching the movies over there. You had the same audience. It doesn't matter where you came from, whether you were a rickshaw driver or you were an industrialist, you watched the same film. You sat in the same theater and you were all watching the same movie. But what did happen after a point is the movies that were made in the 50s were movies which were good stories with the biggest stars in the industry, and they were meant to educate you and entertain you at the same point of time. And what happened was there was a film called Sholay, which everybody loves and everybody's seen, which came around, and it made success so important, and it made the box office so important that the art of writing, as Alyque spoke about and we've all been speaking about, became secondary. Suddenly it became more important to know who your villain was and what your heroes are going to do and how many songs you're going to have and how many action sequences you're going to have, and the writing of the story became less important. And as I grew up in the 80s, we really very, very rarely went to the theater because the movies were just getting worse and worse. Where I'm going with this is the fact that the multiplexes, yes, it's a catch-22. It's sad because the democracy of watching a movie is not there anymore among all the classes. But the fact is that the multiplex has gotten a certain audience back into the theaters who want to pay attention, who finally have a place where they can sit, where they're comfortable and the screen actually is bright and the sound actually works, and you're not worried about rats under your seat, and you're not worried about bottles falling down and breaking, and you can't see a thing because, I mean, you guys have it. I've been to Pile Talkies. I mean, I don't know if it's changed since I was there. Maybe it has changed, no? A little bit, but yeah, I mean, and I grew up in those theaters. I know what it's like. It's very frustrating to go there, and because you're saying, I want to make a film for the rickshaw driver and I want to make a film for the college student, and you can't do both. It's very rare to do both. There's very few filmmakers who can reach out to both audiences. In fact, I think the only guy who can is Raju Virani today, in a sense that he can make a Three Idiots which everybody loves. You can make a Lagero Munna Bhai that everybody loves. I think the multiplex has got an audience back that is really, really interested in finally paying attention and finally being entertained and engaged at the same point of time. Entertainment is not necessarily, engagement is not necessarily entertainment, and vice versa. The fact that a movie like a Kahani works, or the fact that a movie, the fact that even for me personally, the fact that had Udaan got made in a time when, and this is again coming from Mr. Bhaskar's point of why the new age died is because no one wanted to exhibit those films, is because it certainly wasn't feasible to say, you know what, we'll give you matinee shows. They want the theaters there. All you could do is matinee shows because the 3, 6 and 9 is going to go to the commercial film. What's the option? In today's day and age, yes, the option is the multiplex, where my film got a release of 200 screens. 200 screens for a film like Udaan in the year 2000 would have been unimaginable. I would have got 10 screens all over India at 9 a.m. You know, the Satyajit Ray time, which no one is going to go see. I got 200 screens through the day because of the multiplexes. Imtiaz and Bhaskar and Anurag and me, and there's so many more filmmakers, whether it's Anand Gandhi today or Ritesh Batra, the filmmakers that you've been hearing of and whose films you've been going to see, get a chance because of the multiplexes, because there's an audience there to watch their films. Yes, the ticket prices are too high, I totally agree with you. But the fact is that because there is a return on investment possible out of that, is the reason that we can actually go and make our films in the first place. I don't think that I can afford to make, without that, and it's going to happen. The fact that the ticket prices are rising, production prices are also rising. Films are getting more expensive to make. There's an inflation on. And we're still lucky in the fact that you can make pretty much anything today. Unless you make a terrible, terrible film, you can make pretty much anything today and that film will be successful because it's still very cheap to make movies over here and you can make a profit on them. But what is going to happen is that it's going to get more and more expensive to make films, and those ticket prices are going to keep going up, and we're going to get to a point where we have to now start looking towards George Lucas and Steven Spielberg very famously discussed this a couple of months ago when they said that it's possible that the movies are only going to be the big budget blockbusters will be in the theaters, the movies that cost $100 million to make and can potentially make back $200 million, or cost $500 million to make and make back, and will run for 6 months at a time. But all the good, intelligent, engaging material is going to go on television. It's a possibility. It's already happening in the US. You're seeing signs of it already happening across. And the fact is that the sheer quality of American television right now is incredible. Is absolutely incredible. We're not even close there. I mean, the fact that whether it's House of Cards or Breaking Bad or Mad Men or any of these shows are far more engaging than actually going to the movie. In the next 100 years, the way I see it of what's possibly going to happen is that we have now there's a distinction between the white collar and the blue collar when it comes to the movie, single screen and multiplexes. There is a whole bunch of, a lot of my education has come from the internet. I'm sure a lot of you have also been, because of piracy or whatever, and whether it's illegal or legal, we've been watching a lot of our movies on the internet. Either we've been downloading them and watching them at home. What I think is going to happen also is that that's going to get more and more spread out. You're going to have an audience that does not want to see Hindi movie. They want to see German films. They want to see only English films. They want to see foreign films. They want to see short films. They want to see music. They want to see, and you're going to be able to have a chance where you can actually see all of that kind of stuff. Yes, it's sad because it doesn't mean the idea of 1,000 people sitting in a movie theater together to watch a movie. That idea is getting, is going. I mean, the nostalgia that I have of watching movies in Regal or in Sterling, where there used to be very famously the 10:45 night show, where a lot of us in Bombay used to go and watch these movies, and that age is gone. It's become an age of choice. I mean, there's a new kind of democracy in the fact that there's a choice to be able to watch what you want, when you want, how you want, on whatever format you want, whether it's your phone or your laptop or your television. And that is going to happen, but I still feel, and I know everybody here feels the same way, there's no better feeling than going to a movie theater and watching a film in a darkened hall with a lot of other people. And that's not going to change. That will still remain. We will still go. We will still be frightened and scared and emotional and all that kind of stuff in a group, because that's the fun of watching movies. Yeah, so much as we'll have a choice, I hope in the next 100 years we see better films, we see more engaging films, we see fresher films, because the audiences become far more demanding. They're not, I mean really, they're not anything that's stale and the same old stuff is being kicked out, no one's watching it. So yeah, it's positive. I mean, as it's been so far, there's a positive and a negative. I think going ahead will be the same thing, but I think there's good years up ahead. So, thank you.
Questions?
No questions.
Yeah, open the question to everybody, but main target can be Vikram, but he's spoken well. He's spoken very well. I mean, he's said he wasn't going to speak, but he's made a lot of many good points. And I feel so happy because my wife and me, we came into our second learning through our sons. And so it was our sons and their friends who said, watch Diwakar Banerjee. I said, who? Watch him. And you have to listen to your children. And it's a new generation and we love what they're doing, and I'm so happy that we've got a very positive feeling about the future. And that's what always should be. Question? You sort of killed them.
I killed it all.
Really?
The gentleman.
Wiped them out. Absolutely wiped out. There's one who's last man standing.
Ask this lack of single screen. Okay, we used to enjoy, the Imtiaz was telling about the Giraftar period when we used to get the ticket, and we think that this is the most precious thing which we had that time, after having all this sweating, and we get the ticket. And whenever somebody, see, I am from this town, I was a neighbor of actually Karim Manson. I was there only. And whenever I go to some Bombay or Calcutta, anywhere, whenever I came back, people used to ask me, which movie you saw there? They were not asking me where you visited. So that period is over now. Then what is the future of the next 100 years of cinema? That's what I'm asking, this lack of single screen.
He's mentioned it, there's a new democracy which
Yet
is...
what about the audiences? They are deprived of seeing the movies now in the theatre.
I think you've got to understand the finance of cinemas today. The reason multiplexes came in is not to be an intellectual pastime. They came in because if you can put on 5 films a day and 3 of them flop and no audience to them, the other 2 make money, you can run your multiplex. On a single screen, if that film flops, that's it. If 6 films in a row flop on a multi-screen, on a single screen, the single screen will close down. It's a matter of finance. The multi-screen was invented only as a financial way of covering your risk. Put a lot of money into the building, you put a lot of money into the equipment, but are you getting a good return on your investment? So the best thing is what they call hedging. Hedging your bet by having 5 screens instead of 1. Simple as that.
We also, there's change. Let me share with you part of that change. We've talked of what Ira said about democratization, but I'm going to talk of a period before that. What is the dress circle? The dress circle in Calcutta was where people went in DJs. It's a dress circle, you have to wear a tuxedo. And you wore a tuxedo and you had your whiskey soda in the interval. I remember when we were in Iron Cal, the Bombay crowd, when they came to Cal, there was prohibition in Bombay. They couldn't believe it, that in Cal you could booze in the movie halls. And they went wild. They said that, in Bombay we can't get a drink, you have to get a doctor to say he's an alcoholic to buy a bottle of whiskey. But in Calcutta, you could walk into a theatre and in the interval, down your whiskey sodas and go back and watch. Now, those were days where people actually wore dinner jackets to a film. It was a major thing. Metro had ankle carpeting. What did it mean? That the carpeting was so deep that it went down, your ankles were lost in it. So it was hardly a democratic society then, but it changed. It changed. And then we have, I remember my parents saying this, Spartacus came to Bombay. Now, my father was transferred to Bombay. Now, the Malabar Hill apartment, we were there. The sweeper and his wife were in the seat behind my parents in the dress circle. The building sweeper and watching Spartacus. So, things have changed. I think there's plus minus, but change is happening and it's going. There is, you can't get it back. And what Alyque said and what Vikram said is true. That's dead. It's going.
It's actually an extension of what I said. I mean, directly, the future is your choice. You can pretty much watch whatever you want to. If you want to watch the smaller films, by all means watch the smaller films. If you want to watch the larger films, you will. It's already happening. I mean, besides the internet, the fact that now forget the piracy. Legally, you can watch movies on computers. Your computers can hook up to your television. The TVs are getting larger. As you can afford, you're going to start having larger. Studios are already talking directly to people where you can, if you can actually put up a movie theater in your house. You can watch those movies on the Friday where everybody else is, but in the privacy of your house. It's expensive today, but give it a few years, it's all available. So yeah, the next 100 years it's your choice now. It's like with music right now. You can listen to whatever you want. It'll be the same with movies.
I just want to go back to that concept of democratization, democracy. With digitization, filmmaking has become very much more democratic, right? You all have the power to make films. But having a camera in your hand, and I think Imtiaz will agree, is like holding a gun in your hand. You can use that gun responsibly, You can use it to enforce law and order, but you can also use it to kill someone. So you have the camera in your hand, but you must use it responsibly. That is very important. Having the video camera in your hand doesn't mean that you can do anything you like, because after all, film is a medium with which you can manipulate very easily, particularly at the editing stage. You can make the true false and the false true. So I think with democracy should come responsibility. This is point number 1. And the second, which Imtiaz and Vikram both spoke of, with this democracy, will we lose the romance of the movie, as they called it? Movie, the projection theatre, you know, the smell of celluloid. You know, when I used to enter ad labs, I used to say that one place is Bombay. When you go into the DI room, that's Bombay. But when you enter the cutting room, that's Madras. You know, you get the smell there, but you don't get it in the DI room. Is that going? I hope to God it doesn't, because Alyque was saying yesterday when you showed Raja Harishchandra, even today that black and white photography hits you right between the eyes. Look at the photography. Or the photography of a Pathir Pachali or of a Suvarna Rekha, black and white, for heaven's sake, 1913, and if you look at Achyut Kanya, somehow there's something about celluloid. And I know that Imtiaz made his first few films all on celluloid. I think Udan is also made on celluloid. Will you get the same thing when you use an Alexa or a Red? I don't know. But somehow this is something which we need to think about. Is the magic of the movies dying out? This is a question. There's no answer to it.
Yeah, it's the magic of the rotary telephone dying out, you know. I used to enjoy that, you know. So lovely, because you have to wait till it came back.
The magic of the movies, I think will never die, quite honestly. I don't think it'll ever die out. It's just, okay, a theater's not 1,000 screens anymore, but there's still 400 screens. Celluloid, I've shot both my films on film. I love film, and I know that Imtiaz has finally moved over. He shot his first film on digital. Yes. And I know that my next film is most probably going to be digital, and it's not because it's any less magical. It's because it's just more. It's convenient, and it's not even less expensive. It's actually as expensive today on shooting film as it's shooting digital. But there's a convenience to it because your end product is going to be digital. Why go on? Not just that. It's just why go on film in the first place if your end product is going to be digital? And it really is, because you shoot and then you process and then you hallucinate. It's like 4 days before you see the rushes. Digital is now, everything is there.
May I ask a question? As a historian, as a film historian. Just a question. I agree, it's convenient, your end product is digital. What about preservation? The digital is such an unstable medium. I'm really concerned about how long will these films last? I mean, with celluloid, they have lasted until today, more than 100 years. And I'm very concerned about that, and I don't know enough about it. So I'd like to put it to filmmakers. I mean, you would want your film to be seen 100 years later. So,
digital, yes, hard drives are unstable. Optical media is unstable, but there are solutions called LTO tapes, LTO4s, LTO5s. These are the archival form of today. So what you do is you shoot and you immediately archive your stuff, which will last. And the thing is that these, you know that today they're saying there's a guarantee of 30 years of archival. I'm sure by the time 30 years pass, there'll be another form. And in fact, it's probably better in a sense because there is no degradation of your material right now. I know my prints and my negatives are lying at the lab today. I don't know what state they're going to be in 10 years time. I really don't. But anyway, the lab is, they're not keeping prints anymore. So you have to now keep prints in your office, which means you have to have an AC on for at least 12 hours a day in that office. You know, it's going to eventually, it'll eventually just lose. Yes, there is magic there, but it's not...
Recently in the papers they said they can digitize documents and all, and it will be movies too, for over 1,000 years. The storage now on digital can be 1,000 years.
No, I agree with all of that. I agree with everything. Digitization, digital is the medium of the future. But I think it has come too fast because it is still not proved that the final digital image that you get from a red Epic or a red Dragon or whatever, or an Alexa, is better than a celluloid 35mm spherical lens image. And the film quality of it, that softness, it's still not, it's come too early. I think that the phasing out will happen, but it happened a little earlier because of political and economic consideration. Because Sony would want to flood the entire economy with their products, with an Ikegami or with the Canon 5D and 7D. I think it is more of a political decision. But obviously, I do agree that eventually film would be phased out, and it is happening, and we have to accept it. But I think it is also linked to this, entire political, economic question. I think
think with that we are going to end because we run out of time. We are 10 minutes over. But sum up, we are going to have a digital world. We are going to have much more democratic, globalized approach to making movies, seeing movies, funding movies. So what does it mean for Indian film, cinema for the next 100 years? I would like to see a situation, and it's going to come, where our two colleagues here, three colleagues here who are making cinema, would be working on budgets of 1,000 crore plus in their lifetime, each film. And it's going to happen. It's not going to come from their pockets, it's not going to come from Indian pockets, but it's going to come from corporates who will have shareholders spread across the world. They're going to take teams, they're going to have 5,000 prints all over the world, maybe 300 in Afghanistan, 700 in the Southeast Asia. But that world is coming because it's going to be so cheap to distribute it. And it's going to go instantly. There was a time when in India we got films 5 years, 3 years, 2 years after the rest of the world. Today everything is instantaneous. It's going to happen that way all over in the future. Funding, as I said, was 120% a year. We've come a long way from there. They must be able to access funds at 5% interest per annum from the US. So if there's a rupee fall, they'll be hit. They're going to be really badly hit because their debt is going to suddenly jump up, like from 43 to 63 when the rupee went. But otherwise, if they access funds at 5% interest per annum, which is less than 0.5% per month, they can do wonders. And they're going to have a lot of financial guys coming into the industry, a good thing and a bad thing. Because with the financial guys, there's going to be control. And with that control, creativity is going to suffer to an extent. Because as Imtiaz mentioned in his question answer, you are accountable to the financier for return on investment. But how much of that play between creativity, because ultimately movies are about storytelling. They'll always survive, there'll always be this tug of war, good or bad. The tug of war may be good because only the best creative things will move. And we close with, you may think that people who make films just do it spontaneously. Perhaps not. Think of Star Wars, Luke Skywalker. Where do you think Luke Skywalker came from? Did he just come from George Lucas's head? He did not. George Lucas did not bring Lucas Skywalker in. Lucas Skywalker came from the Greek and the Indian epics, from Homer, from Vyasa, from Valmiki. Luke Skywalker came from Joseph Campbell's book, A Hero with 1,000 Faces, which was published in 1949, which looked at the way a hero's path lies. And George Lucas studied that. And George Lucas created this with that philosophy in mind, so that everybody who saw the Star Wars films, and all of us have seen it, we revel, we wonder, and we say, wow, but it's an eternal truth. And it's an eternal truth that grabbed us. So films will be there. We thank the panelists, we thank the audience for being in, rather chilly surroundings. No, we'll answer the questions later. We've really run out of time and it's cold. So a lot of people are already leaving. So please come forward with your question after the session breaks. But please give our panelists a very warm applause. And give yourselves a very warm applause for the cold evening. Thank you.
And the last word just to say, to paraphrase Shakespeare, all the world's a screen and all the men and women will soon be filming.